Hey friends, did you know that sometimes the most brilliant tool is created not in time, but for the future? What happens when a weapon is so ahead of its era that it's shelved for being excessively powerful? Today, we're diving into one of the most paradoxical and gripping stories of World War II. This isn't just about a gun. It's about a true engineering prophecy, first rejected and then desperately begged to be returned. It's the story of how one man with a drafting board saw a future that generals did not. Stay with us until the very end. The finale holds a shocking conclusion about how decisions made in quiet offices changed the fates of thousands of soldiers on the front line. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and actively comment. Your opinion is priceless to us. Let's go. The gun that had no place. Imagine. Spring, 1941. Mere weeks until the fateful 22nd of June. The Red Army adopts a new anti-tank gun, the ZIS-2. Its characteristics aren't just good, they're staggering. A long pike-like barrel. A shell flying at incredible speed. Armor penetration that reaches 90 millimeters at a distance of half a kilometer. To understand, the main German tanks of that period, Panzer IIs and IIIs, had frontal armor of 30 to 50 millimeters. It was like using a sniper rifle on cardboard targets. It seemed like the perfect shield against any armored threat. But only a few months pass. Autumn. The country is in flames. Factories are evacuated beyond the Urals. Every ton of metal, every machine tool, every worker is worth its weight in gold. And suddenly, an order, production of the wonder gun ZIS-2 is to be halted. The official reason sounds like an absurd joke, a ludicrous quip in the harshest of times. Excessive armor penetration. Just think about it. In the midst of war, with the enemy rushing towards Moscow, the country's leadership stops producing a superweapon because it's too powerful. Commanders at the front, facing the first tank wedges, desperately demand these guns. And in response, they just shrug. Production has been stopped. Factories have switched to making simpler and cheaper 45s. Why? Had the General Staff and the People's Commissariat of Armaments gone mad? To understand this seemingly insane logic, we need to look deeper. Not at tactics, but at economics. Not at specifications, but at the assembly line. At the very kitchen where the weapons of victory were born. This is a story not only about ballistics, but also about steel, about machine tools, about man-hours, and about the terrible shortage of everything in late 1941. A story where the cold calculation of economists and technologists clashed with the hot demands of the battlefield. And, as often happens at that moment, the economists won. The genius from Gorky, Vasily Grabin. To understand the soul of the ZIS-2, you must understand the man who created it. Vasily Grabin, he is an entire era in Soviet artillery. His name stands alongside titans like Khotin, tanks, or Ilyushin, aircraft. But unlike many, Grabin was not only a brilliant designer but also, as we would say today, an outstanding production engineer and manager. He thought not only in blueprints but also in technological flows. His Central Design Bureau, CDB, at the Gorky Artillery Plant No. 92, named after Stalin, hence the index ZIS, was a true idea factory. Grabin implemented revolutionary methods for his time. Parallel design of components, maximum unification of parts between different guns, simplification of technological processes. He fought for every minute of the production cycle, for every kilogram of metal. His motto could have been powerful, accurate, but also technologically advanced and cheap. It would seem here is the perfect candidate for creating a mass weapon of war. And he became one. His 76mm divisional gun ZIS-3, the 45 M42. These were guns churned out to the front by the thousands. But the ZIS-2 was his special, uncomfortable child. It was born not from a demand for mass but from a demand for a qualitative breakthrough. A premonition of the storm, intelligence, and the birth of a caliber. Where did the idea for such a mighty anti-tank gun even come from? If the enemy has no thick armored tanks, why such power? This is where it gets really interesting. Soviet military intelligence worked, and worked well. Already in the spring of 1940, alarming reports began arriving in Moscow. Germany was actively developing new heavy tanks with armor thickness up to 70 millimeters. For the late 30s and early 40s, this was a colossal figure. Standard Soviet 45s could penetrate such armor point-blank, and even that wasn't certain. This data was confirmed in practice. During the Soviet-Finnish War, the Winter War, and later, during tests of captured German PZ-KPFW-3s of new modifications, it became clear enemy armor was getting tougher. An adequate response was needed. The task to create a new powerful anti-tank gun came to Grabin's CDB. The technical assignment was specific and frightening. Ensure penetration of 70 millimeters of armor from a distance of a full kilometer and at an angle of 30 degrees, equivalent to increasing the effective armor thickness. It was a challenge. And here Grabin and his team showed their genius. They did not take the beaten path of increasing caliber. A 76 millimeter gun, for example, already existed, but to achieve such penetration it needed a very heavy and powerful shell, massive recoil, large and heavy trails. The result would have been a bulky, heavy, complex to produce and camouflage weapon. Instead, they chose the path of high technology, a relatively small caliber, but an extremely high muzzle velocity. After lengthy calculations and trials, they settled on a caliber of 57 millimeters. It was the golden mean. A smaller caliber, 45 millimeters, did not allow accelerating the shell to the required speed and placing a sufficient explosive charge in it. A larger one, 76, led to an overweight system. 57 perfect. A long barrel, a full 73 calibers, or over 4 meters. A powerful charge, a streamlined heavy shell. Physics put at the service of destruction. Thus, the ZIS-2 project was born. Trials, shock and awe. Field tests of the new gun caused shock. Or perhaps awe. The numbers spoke for themselves. Muzzle velocity of the armor-piercing shell, 990 meters per second. For comparison, the German supergun of that period, the 50mm Pak-38, had this figure at about 820 to 835 meters per second. Armor penetration at 500 meters, 84 millimeters of homogeneous armor at a right angle. The Pak-38 penetrated only 49. This wasn't just a lead, it was a chasm. Accuracy. Thanks to the high velocity and long barrel, the ZIS-2 had a precision unavailable to other guns. Experienced gunners in tests could hit a mock tank turret from a kilometer away. This turned it from just a gun into a sniper's tool. It seemed the absolute champion was born. A weapon capable of destroying any existing and prospective enemy tank from a safe distance. It was adopted in March 1941. But here's the paradox. Triumph at the proving ground turned into a nightmare in the workshop. The production nightmare. Why the masterpiece didn't fit the war. And here we come to the crucial point that explains the entire subsequent paradox. The summer-autumn of 1941. This is not only the Wehrmacht's offensive. It's a total restructuring of the entire Soviet industry. Factories are dismantled and shipped east on rafts, flat cars, trucks. Beyond the Urals to Siberia to the Volga region. Chaos, confusion, work under the open sky. In these conditions, the priority becomes not the best, but the simplest and most mass-producible. The front needed the maximum number of barrels at any cost. And the ZIS-2 categorically did not fit into this new reality. Why? The capricious barrel. Length over 4 meters, requiring the highest precision in internal machining, rifling. Blanks for such barrels often warped during rolling and heat treatment, becoming scrap. The rejection rate reached 30% or more. For comparison, the barrel for a simple 45 or for the divisional ZIS-3 was shorter, technologically simpler. Its manufacture wasn't such a headache. Material shortage. Such a long and strong barrel required special, high-quality steel. In the conditions of evacuation and the loss of traditional metallurgical bases, Donbass, southern Ukraine, it was catastrophically lacking. Simple guns could be made from more accessible grades. An atypical round. The USSR had no mass production of 57mm shells before this. New production lines had to be created from scratch for them. Dyes, molds, chemical compositions for explosives and propellant casings. This meant time and resources which were not available. The 45 and the 3-inch 76mm had established decades-honed shell production. High cost. One ZIS-2 cost significantly more to produce than, for example, a ZIS-3. In conditions where the count was in thousands of guns per month, this difference became astronomical. Now imagine yourself in the shoes of the head of the People's Commissariat of Armaments. Reports on the desk. The front is asking for anti-tank weapons by the thousands. Factories are barely standing up in new locations. Resources are limited. And you have two options: with the same resources and time, make, say, 50 precise, complex, super powerful guns, or 500 simple ones, but quite effective against current German tanks. Which do you choose? The choice made in November 41 was harsh but logical from the perspective of total war of attrition. Halt production of the ZIS-2. The few hundred guns already produced, 371 units, a drop in the ocean of the front's needs, were sent to the hottest sectors near Moscow, near Leningrad. There they performed brilliantly, but there were too few of them to change the picture. 1943, the world changes. The arrival of the menagerie. For 2 years, the ZIS-2 languished in oblivion. Only those who worked with it remembered, and a few far-sighted specialists in the artillery departments. But at the front, a different reality reigned. The Germans, having encountered the T-34 and KV, also didn't stand still. And their response was terrifying. In late 1942, early 43, new German tanks began arriving on the Eastern Front. The PZ KPFW-6 Tiger with frontal armor of 100mm and a powerful 88mm gun, and then the PZ KPFW-V Panther with formidable sloped armor. This was no longer just evolution, it was a revolution on the battlefield. The Red Army's standard means of fighting them were almost useless. In the spring of 43, a nearly intact Tiger was captured on the Leningrad front. It was brought to the proving ground and shot at with everything available. The result shocked the command. 45mm gun, M42. Its shells did not penetrate even the Tiger's side from 200 meters. They only left dents. 76mm divisional gun ZIS-3, the backbone of anti-tank artillery. Its standard armor-piercing shell penetrated the Tiger's front only from about 300 meters, and not always. The subcaliber shell, scarce and expensive, fared better, but it was no panacea. To knock out a Tiger, it had to be let dangerously close, which for light gun crews was often tantamount to suicide. At the front, stories multiplied of dozens of shells simply bouncing off the German cats. The morale of anti-tank gunners fell. An urgent, even desperate, solution was needed. And in this atmosphere of universal alarm, someone remembered. But we had such a gun, Grabin's 57mm, long barrel. Preserved ZIS-2 specimens were found, dragged to the same proving ground to face the same Tiger. And a miracle happened. Or rather, what was originally built into it was confirmed. The 57mm armor-piercing shell BR-271 of the ZIS-2 gun confidently penetrated the Tiger's frontal armor from a distance of 500 meters. Moreover, it retained high accuracy. This was the only available, albeit from the past, serial model of Soviet weaponry that could duel a Tiger on equal terms. Legend has it that when Stalin was informed of these tests and reminded of the old resolution about excessive power, he just grunted and said something like, "So Comrade Grabin saw further than some." On June 15, 1943, the State Defense Committee, GKO, personally signed a decree. Resume production of the ZIS-2. Immediately. Second birth. The long arm at Kursk and beyond. Now the ZIS-2 was produced not in the evacuated Gorky plants, but at established powerful factories in the rear. Technological problems, of course, remained, but they had learned to cope. By the start of the Grand Battle of Kursk, the first new batches of 57ths began arriving at the troops, and here it truly underwent its baptism by fire. The tactics for using the ZIS-2 were different from those of lighter guns. It was not placed in the first line of defense. It was treasured as a sniper tool. Crews of 5 or 6 men, excellent camouflage, positions on the flanks of expected tank attacks or in the depth of the defense. Engagement range from 600 to 1,200 meters. At such a range, Even the Tiger with its excellent optics could not always quickly detect and destroy a well-camouflaged, low-profile gun. And the ZIS-2's shell did its job. By that time, a new subcaliber shell, the BR-271P, had been developed for it. It was lighter, 1.79 kilograms, but due to a special core made of superhard material, tungsten carbide, and even greater velocity, 1,270 meters per second, its armor penetration at 500 meters reached a mind-boggling 147 millimeters. This guaranteed the defeat of any German tank frontally, even the seemingly invulnerable Panther. The ZIS-2 became a weapon for professionals and hunters. It did not fire volleys over an area. It made one, rarely two, precise aim shots, hitting vital tank components. The side of the turret, the hull near the ammunition rack, the engine compartment. And then the crew, using the gun's lightness, only 1,250 kilograms in combat position, phenomenally light for such power, quickly changed position, avoiding return fire. Soldiers nicknamed it the Beast Slayer. And German tankers, encountering inexplicable penetrations at ranges where Soviet guns were powerless, began to get nervous. By the end of the war, the ZIS-2 became the backbone of anti-tank regiments. From 1943 to 45, 13,710 such guns were produced. It fought all the way to Berlin. But its story did not end there. The long life of a pensioner. What's amazing is that the ZIS-2 truly began a long and glorious service after World War II. Its characteristics, accuracy, high muzzle velocity, excellent power-to-weight ratio, made it in demand in local conflicts all over the world, where the USSR supplied its weapons. Korean War, 1950 to 1953 North Korean crews, using ZIS-2s from ambushes, successfully fought American M4 Shermans and even heavier M26 Pershings. In rugged mountainous terrain, its lightness and accuracy were most welcome. Middle East, Six-Day War, 1967 on the Golan Heights, Syrian units used outdated, technically speaking, ZIS-2s, but with more modern ammunition. There is evidence they scored hits on Israeli M48 Patton tanks. Yes, by then there were RPGs and more powerful guns, but the old 57 could still stand up for itself in the hands of a skilled crew. Even in some African conflicts, this gun could be found, passing from hand to hand as a reliable and unpretentious argument in a dispute. The story of the ZIS-2 is not just the story of a specific barrel. It's a metaphor for the foresight and stubbornness of an engineer who saw a threat beyond the horizon. It's a story about the tragic gap between technological capabilities and the harsh reality of a war economy. It's a lesson that in moments of crisis, they often choose not the best, but the good enough and available. And finally, it's a story about a triumphant return, when time finally catches up with a vision. It was too strong for 1941. When the enemy was light, it became salvagingly adequate for 1943, when the enemy grew an iron skin. It lived a long life because it was created not just as a weapon for today, but as a weapon for tomorrow. Vasily Grabin built into it not only steel and ballistics, but also a margin of safety for the future. And the future appreciated it. So what do you think about this story, friends? Have you ever encountered situations in life where your ideas or abilities seemed excessive to others before time proved them right? Do you think another compromise could have been found in 41 to avoid halting production of such a masterpiece? I'm waiting for your thoughts, debates, and stories in the comments. Let's discuss the amazing fate of the most paradoxical gun of the war. And if such stories about inconvenient genius weapons interest you, hit the like button. Write what else to talk about, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new investigations from the world of history, technology, and amazing human destinies. Together, we'll take apart many more legendary mechanisms. Until next time,